Chosen one, there is a specific kind of tired that follows a real decision, not the tired that comes from overwork or from staying up too late. This is different. This is the tired that settles in after you have chosen something costly, after you have moved when you were not certain the ground would hold. You know exactly what I am talking about. And in the quiet that followed that step, the uncertain quiet, not the peaceful kind, you have been carrying a question you may not have even said out loud. Did it matter? I am here to answer that. Not with encouragement, with the mechanics of what actually happened when you moved. Because there is a principle at work in this universe that human eyes cannot see in real time, only in retrospect, only from distance. Certain decisions made from the deep and faithful place do not produce a single result. They produce a cascade, and the cascade your step activated is not measured in days, it is measured in 10 years. A decade of realignment is now in motion. The waiting is over. And by the end of what I am about to share with you, you will understand exactly why that step was the most powerful thing you have done in years. Before I go any further, I want to tell you what is ahead, because every part of this matters, and I do not want you to miss any of it. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you the actual mechanics behind what your step activated, not just the spiritual side, but the reason it carries, the weight it carries. I am going to walk you through 5 specific areas of your life that are already shifting right now, things you may have already started to feel but could not name. I am going to give you something practical, a framework you can use today to bring this from concept into your actual life. And I am going to address something that has to do with the way your mind is wired, and why some people who deserve everything still miss what was sent to them. Stay with me through all of it. This is worth your full attention. Now, before I explain what your step activated, I need to say something first. I need to acknowledge what it cost, because you did not move easily. No one who crosses a real threshold does. They do not move because it is comfortable. They move because something in them refuses to stay still any longer. Maybe it was releasing a relationship that had been heavy for longer than you want to admit. Maybe it was choosing silence when everything in your body wanted to react. Maybe it was starting something when you were not sure you had enough left in you to start. Maybe it was forgiving not for anyone else, but because the weight of carrying it was becoming heavier than the wound itself. Maybe it was walking away from a version of your life that fit you once but stopped fitting a long time ago. Or maybe it was simply saying yes to something you had been afraid of for years. You know which one is yours. I do not need to name it more precisely than that. And since that step, there has been a quiet, not the peaceful kind, the uncertain kind. The kind where you wonder if what you did was even registered by anything beyond your own experience of it. The kind where you check the horizon, and the horizon looks the same. And slowly, quietly, you start to wonder if you imagined the weight of what you did. Here is what I want to tell you. That quiet is not evidence that nothing happened. That quiet is what the in-between feels like. It is what it feels like when something enormous is in motion but has not yet broken the surface. And some of you have noticed things in your body and your emotions in the time since that step. An unusual fatigue, not tied to illness or overwork, a deep tiredness that sleep only partially touches. Waves of emotion that arrive without a clear trigger, tears in unexpected moments, a strange sadness followed by a strange peace, followed by a hope you cannot fully explain. A changed tolerance. Environments that used to feel normal now feel suffocating. Conversations that used to be easy now feel draining. Things that used to absorb your energy without effort now leave you hollow. I want you to hear this clearly. Those are not signs that something is wrong. Those are signs that something is right. Your whole system is adjusting. What you are feeling is the experience of crossing a threshold from the inside. It is real, it is physiological, and it is evidence that the step you took was not ordinary. Now I want to teach you something, because the most valuable thing I can give you in this moment is not just the assurance that your step mattered. I want to show you why it matters in a way that holds up not just in this moment, but in every hard moment that comes after. There are two kinds of decisions a person makes in a lifetime. The first kind is a process decision, a daily move. Waking up, choosing patience, showing up, doing the work. These decisions matter. They build your character and your days and the texture of who you are. But they produce results that are proportional and near. Do the work, see the result. The equation is relatively simple. Then there is the second kind, a threshold decision. A threshold decision is not about what it produces immediately. It is about the door it opens. When you make this kind of decision, you cross from one version of your life into another, and the mathematics changes entirely. A threshold decision does not produce proportional results. It produces cascading results. One aligned move at the right moment sets a chain reaction in motion that does not play out over a week or a season, but over years. In the ancient Greek language, there were two different words for time. The first was chronos, the kind of time that moves forward on a clock, 1 minute after another, measurable, predictable, sequential. The second word was kairos. Kairos is not about the sequence of time, it is about the quality of a moment. It describes an appointed window, a junction where the decision made inside it carries weight that no ordinary moment carries. Where one move means more than 1,000 ordinary moves, your step landed inside a kairos window. That is why it is not measured in days. That is why 10 years is the right frame. Not because 10 is symbolic, but because the realignment your step activated is structural. It does not change your week. It changes the conditions of your future. Joseph understood a version of this, though not in the moment it was happening to him. At the lowest point of his journey, buried in circumstances that made no sense and offered no evidence of forward movement, he made a series of decisions, quiet decisions. Decisions about integrity, when integrity cost him everything. Decisions about character, when no one was watching and no one was applauding. And the consequence of those decisions did not arrive the following month. It arrived a decade later, in a form so large it affected thousands of people beyond himself. The threshold decision looked small from inside the pit. From 10 years of distance, it was the hinge point of everything. Your step is a hinge point. I cannot tell you the exact shape of what the next 10 years holds. That is not something I have access to, and I will not pretend otherwise. But I can tell you that the mechanics are real. That threshold decisions produce cascading results. That what you did, that quiet, costly, faithful move, has already set something in motion that you will not fully understand until you are looking back at it from a distance. Now, I want to address something that might be the most important thing I say in this entire message, because I know what some of you are thinking. If this step was so significant, why does everything still feel the same? Why does the horizon look unchanged? Why is the waiting still feeling like waiting? I want to answer that by showing you what the waiting was actually doing. Think of a seed placed in the ground. For a long time, nothing happens above the surface. You cannot see anything. If you did not know what a seed was, you might look at that patch of soil and assume nothing was there. You might assume the seed was wasted, the effort was wrong, the timing was off. But underneath, the most critical work is happening. The seed is not stuck. The seed is building. And what it builds first is not the shoot, or the flower, or the fruit. It builds the root system, because the depth of the root system determines how tall the tree can safely grow. A tree with shallow roots cannot hold itself in a storm. A tree with deep roots becomes immovable. The waiting season was your root season, and 3 things were built in you during that time that could not have been built any other way. The first is discernment. The ability to see through what is not real, to feel the difference between something genuinely aligned with your purpose and something that only looks like it. You did not have this at the level you have it now. The long season taught you the difference between a genuine door and a beautiful illusion. You know things now that you could not have known before. And that knowing will protect what is coming. The second is rootedness, a settled center, a place inside you that does not require the approval of what surrounds you in order to stand. Difficult seasons strip away everything that was holding you upright but should not have been. What remains is what is actually yours. What remains does not collapse. The third is what I would call a holy desperation. Not panic, not anxiety, a quality of sincere, undistracted readiness, the kind that makes moving non-negotiable when the Kairos window opens. Because the window opens for many people. But not everyone moves when it opens. Only the ones who have been made ready. Only the ones whose readiness is stronger than their fear. You moved. That means the season did its full work in you. And I want you to sit with this. The step you took could only have been taken by the version of you that the waiting created. If you had attempted that same move 2 years ago, it would not have carried the same weight. The roots were not deep enough. The threshold would not have opened in the same way. The preparation was not a delay. It was the prerequisite. You needed everything the season built in you before the step could mean what it means now. I want to pause here and tell you what is still ahead. In the next part of this message, I am going to show you the 5 specific areas of your life that are already shifting right now as a result of what you activated. Real areas, relationships, provision, calling, the inner version of you that is being finalized, and the convergence of all of them in a single season. I am going to give you a way to bring everything you just understood into a practical framework you can use today. And I want to address something about the way your mind is wired right now, why the brain that carried you through the waiting season may not be equipped on its own to receive what the new season is sending. That piece matters more than you might think. Stay with me. We established something important. Your step was not a process move. It was a threshold crossing. And what the waiting season before it was doing was not stalling you, it was rooting you, building the version of you that the threshold required. And now I want to go deeper, because everything we have covered so far has been leading to the question that actually changes everything. Not just why the step mattered, but why this step, at this moment, carries the specific weight it carries. There are threshold decisions, and then there are threshold decisions that land in the right season. And those two things together, the right move made by the right version of you inside the right window, those are what change decades. I want to show you how to recognize whether what you did was one of those. Not so you can debate it, but so you can stop questioning it. There are 3 signs that a decision was a true threshold crossing. Not just a brave move, but the move, the one that shifts the structure of what is possible for you. The first sign is this: it cost something you were not certain you could afford to lose. Not money necessarily, something more real than that. It cost comfort, or certainty, or a version of safety you had been relying on. Real threshold decisions always cost something at the level that matters. Surface decisions cost effort. Threshold decisions cost something you loved. The second sign is that making it required a version of you that did not exist 3 years ago. If the step would have been available to you earlier and you simply did not take it, it was a process decision with delayed action. But if the truth is that the step you just took was genuinely beyond who you were 2 years ago, if the waiting was actually building the capacity for it, then you crossed a threshold. And the third sign is this: it felt like a point of no return, even before you knew where it was going. That quality, that irreversibility. Not the despair of burning bridges, but the quiet, settled knowing that what came before and what comes after are different chapters. If you felt that if some part of you recognized that crossing this line meant the old version of your life was behind you, that is the felt experience of a genuine threshold. Not everything in the last few years qualified, but one thing did, and you know which one it is. I want to tell you something about what that means spiritually. I hear the Spirit saying this, and I say it with care, not as a claim beyond what I can know, but as what I believe is true for the person receiving this message right now. I hear it said, I saw that move. It was not small to me. The step that no one applauded, the crossing that happened quietly, in a moment the world did not witness, it was witnessed. And what has been set in motion from that moment is proportional not to the size of the audience that saw it, but to the depth of the place it came from. I want to share something with you. Not long ago, someone I know of, I will not use names, because this is not about spectacle, was 9 months into what looked like a total collapse. A career he had spent years building, dismantled. A relationship structure he had depended on, gone. And in the middle of all of it, he made a single threshold decision. He chose something that cost him the last shred of what felt safe. It did not make sense to anyone around him. It barely made sense to him. But he moved. And on the other side of that move, something began. Not immediately, not the following week. But within a year, things had shifted in ways he could not have engineered or predicted. Within 3 years, the life he is living would have been unrecognizable to the version of him who made that initial step in the dark. He proved something in silence before it was ever visible in public. Your step is doing the same work right now. Now, I want to show you what the activation actually looks like. What has been set in motion. Not in vague spiritual language, but in the real areas of your life where you will feel it. 5 things are shifting, and I want to name them one by one. Something is shifting in your relationships. The people who were meant to stay in the previous chapter of your life are already beginning to exit. Not dramatically necessarily, quietly, naturally, with a sense of completion rather than conflict. And in the space they leave, something new is being arranged. Connections that understand the language of where you are going, not where you have been. People who do not require you to shrink to be comfortable around them. You may have already noticed that certain dynamics feel different, heavier, less fitting. That is not you being difficult. That is alignment in motion. Do not hold what is already leaving, and do not manufacture what is not yet here. What belongs to this new season will arrive with a recognition you cannot fake and cannot force. Something is shifting in your provision. The way resources flow to you, the structures of support and supply in your life, those are beginning to reorganize. Not because you have done everything right, but because a threshold crossing changes the terrain of what is available to you. Doors that were genuinely unavailable before are becoming accessible, not all at once. In sequence, what I want to tell you is this: do not measure the shift by the speed, measure it by the direction. If things are beginning to move that have been fixed for years, that is the right sign, regardless of how fast it feels. Something is shifting in your calling. The fog around what you are actually here to do, what your specific assignment is in this season, that fog is beginning to thin. You may have moments of unusual clarity, a sense of knowing your next step that feels different from past guesses or hopes. The wilderness was, in part, a stripping away of the voices that were not yours. What is left is more genuinely you. The clarity coming is not someone else's definition of your purpose applied to your life. It is your own, arrived at through everything you have carried. Something is shifting in who you are becoming. And I want to be precise about this. You are not waiting to become the version of yourself who can handle the new season. You are not being built toward that. You are being finalized into it. The work that needed to happen internally is largely done. What is ahead is not more formation. It is function. The person you have been becoming through everything you endured is being moved into position. And the 5th thing, and this one matters most, is this: for the first time, all of it is converging in the same season. The right version of you, the right connections, the right resources, the right clarity, all of them arriving at the same time. That convergence is not ordinary, It is what a decade-long activation looks like when it begins to surface. And it is why I said from the beginning that what you stepped into is not measured in weeks. Now I want to address something that I believe is one of the most important things I can say to you today, and it has to do with your mind. Here is what I want you to understand. Everything we have talked about, the activation, the cascade, the convergence, all of it is real, and all of it is already in motion. But there is a specific challenge that comes after a long waiting season. Your spirit has crossed into new territory. But your brain, your actual neurological operating system, may still be running on the frequency of the old season, the frequency of survival, of scarcity, of bracing for what goes wrong. And a brain running on that frequency will struggle to recognize opportunity when it arrives because it is still scanning for threat. It will struggle to receive what is being sent because it is wired to protect, not to receive. Science has been studying this for decades. There is a specific state of brain activity associated with genius, with intuition, with the ability to perceive and respond to what is invisible to a mind in survival mode. Researchers at some of the most respected universities in the world have documented it. They call it the gamma state. And what they have found is that children operate in gamma naturally. It is why learning is effortless in early childhood, why creativity and curiosity are so naturally alive, why everything feels possible. But the conditions of modern life, the stress, the systems, the accumulated weight of years of difficulty gradually suppress the gamma state. Scientists call this the decline effect. And here is what I find most relevant for you specifically. Those who were born with a stronger original capacity, the ones who were always more sensitive, more perceptive, more aware than the people around them, they feel the loss of that state more acutely than anyone else, because the gap between who they were wired to be and who the world compressed them into is larger. You have felt that gap. You have spent years knowing that something in you was capable of more than the life that has been available to you. That is not arrogance, that is accurate perception. Your step moved you spiritually. But I want your mind to arrive at the same level your spirit just entered. There is a 7-minute audio developed by a neuroscientist with over 3 decades of research. Not a meditation, not a mantra. No effort required beyond listening, specifically engineered to bring the brain back into gamma state. I think of it not as a product, but as a recalibration device. Your step turned the dial. This is what tunes the receiver so your mind can hear what is already broadcasting toward you. It is called the Genius Song, developed by Dr. Robert Lake, and over 18,000 people have used it. If it resonates with you, the details are in the pinned comment and in the description below this message. The link there gives you access at $39. That is a price available only through that link, not anywhere else, with a full money-back guarantee, so there is no risk in exploring it. I mention it because this is where it belongs, not as a detour, but as the next natural step after everything we have talked about today. And if it is not for you, that is completely fine. What matters is that you understand the principle. Your mind needs to arrive where your spirit already is. Now, I want to give you something practical before we close, because understanding is only useful if it changes how you move. I want to walk you through what I call the activation audit. 3 questions, not to be written down or debated, just to be held quietly in your mind and answered honestly. The first question is this: what did you do recently that cost something you were not certain you could afford to lose? Not the effort version. The genuine cost, the thing you laid down and could not take back. The second question: what version of yourself did that step require, the version that exists now or the one that existed 3 years ago? If the honest answer is that the person you were 3 years ago could not have done that thing, then you know what the waiting was building toward. And the third question: what has felt irreversible since that step, even before any external result has arrived? That quality of irreversibility, that settled knowing that before and after are genuinely different, is not imagination. It is the felt recognition of a genuine threshold. You do not have to answer out loud. Just let those 3 questions do their work. Now, I want to give you something to carry from this, not a long list. 1 practice. I want you to call it the declaration return. 1 sentence, spoken to yourself quietly, internally, whenever doubt tries to move back in. The sentence is this: I already moved. The activation is already in motion. I will not call back what I sent forward. That is not positive thinking. That is an accurate statement of what is true. Your step was real. The cascade is real. And calling back your faith from it now would not undo what was activated. It would only make you less present to receive what is arriving. You are allowed to believe this is real. You are allowed to stop explaining yourself to people who are still living in the frequency of the old season. You are allowed to let this new chapter look different from what you imagined it would look like. You are allowed to protect what is being built in you without justifying why. And you do not owe anyone an apology for having moved when you moved. Not a single one. You are the pioneer, the one who crossed before the path was visible. You are the cycle breaker, the one who ended something inherited, so the next generation does not have to carry it. You are the builder laying foundations that will hold weight far beyond what you can currently see. And you are the seer, the one who recognized the Kairos window when it opened and chose it. Those are not titles. They are descriptions of what you actually did. And now I want to close this with you. Before I do, I want you to do something with me. Not a physical exercise, just a shift in perspective, right where you are. Stay exactly where you are. Wherever you are sitting or standing or lying down, stay there. And for a moment, let your mind go forward. Not forward into worry or planning, forward into arrival. I want you to imagine yourself standing 10 years from this moment, looking back at today. And from that position, 10 years out, you are watching the person you are right now, in the middle of the uncertain quiet, carrying the step you just took, not yet able to see what it set in motion. And from 10 years away, you can see all of it, the chain that started, the doors that opened, the version of yourself that emerged. And from that place, looking back, you recognize what this moment actually was. It was not a small move. It was the beginning of everything that followed. Let that settle, not as a fantasy. As a recognition, your spirit already knows what your step activated. This is just helping your mind see what your spirit sees. You came into this message not knowing what your step meant. You are leaving knowing that it was not small. It was not a coincidence. It was not luck or chance or an ordinary decision made by an ordinary person at an ordinary time. It was a threshold crossing made by you. At the right moment, from the right place. The waiting is over. That is not a promise I am making you about the future. It is a description of what already happened. The overness of the waiting was sealed the moment you moved. I hear the Spirit saying this, and I say it with the weight it deserves. The step that no one applauded, the move that cost you something real, the crossing that happened in the quiet it was heard. And what is being released into your life from this moment is not a small reward for a small act. It is a decade of return. Go forward knowing the ground has already shifted. Go forward knowing the most powerful thing you have done in years is already bearing fruit. Go forward knowing you are not waiting anymore. If the recalibration tool I mentioned resonates with you, the details are in the pinned comment. If not, carry what you heard today. The activation does not need your permission to continue. It already started.